Hello everyone. Today we will talk about the properties of quadrilaterals. So different types of quadrilaterals here. One is trapezium, another parallelogram, then square, rectangle and rhombus. So today we will be talking about all these quadrilateral properties. First thing, in trapezium, this is the trapezium. So what do you observe here? Whether it's a quadrilateral? Yes. So it's a quadrilateral closed figure having 4 sides. So first thing which you will remember here, that is, it is quadrilateral. It's a quadrilateral. Next property, that in a trapezium, which is a quadrilateral, in which one of the opposite pair, either this one of the opposite pair or this one of the opposite pair, should be parallel to each other. So observe here, in this case these two opposite sides are parallel to each other. So the next property is that one opposite pair of side, one opposite pair means side, should be parallel, is parallel. So this is a property of a trapezium in which one of the opposite sides should be parallel to each other. Okay. Now we will talk about the parallelogram. So first thing, what do you observe here? What type of parallelogram it is? So it's also a quadrilateral. Since we are talking about the different types of quadrilateral, so all of them are quadrilateral. Now, the next property, what is the property of a parallelogram? When it will be a parallelogram? If both opposite side should be parallel to each other and equal to each other. If both the opposite pair parallel as well as equal to each other, then it will be a parallelogram. So the property is both opposite pair means sides are equal, should be are parallel and equal. Okay. One more property is in parallelogram, that the opposite angles are also equal in parallelogram. So both pair of opposite angles are equal. So these two opposite pair equal and these two opposite pair of angles are also equal. There is one more property of a parallelogram. In a parallelogram, this is a diagonal. अगर आप देखेंगे, this is one of the diagonal and this is another diagonal. This one is another diagonal. So in parallelogram, the diagonals bisect each other. Bisect each other means that ये साइड इस साइड के इक्वल होगी और ये साइड इस साइड के इक्वल होगी. So, in parallelogram, the diagonals bisect each other. So, one more property of a parallelogram, that diagonals bisect each other. Bisect each other. So, these are the properties of a parallelogram. Is it clear? Okay. Now come to the square part. In square, what do you observe? What is the first thing? That it's a quadrilateral. It's a quadrilateral. Okay. So, one thing that it is a quadrilateral, and observe or compare square with the parallelogram. क्या ये square parallelogram भी है? Yes. So, it is a parallelogram also. It is a parallelogram also, because in parallelogram the opposite sides equal and parallel. Same way here also the opposite sides equal and parallel. So, it is also a parallelogram. So, all the properties of a parallelogram, will be there in square also. Now, the next property, in square, all angles are of 90 degree. All angles are of 90 degree. So, all angles are 90 degree each. Okay. So, all angles are 90 degree each. Now, we will talk about their diagonal. In case of diagonal of a square, let's see the diagonal of a square. What property we will get it? The diagonals, here the diagonals bisect each other. यहाँ पर आपके जो diagonals हैं वो bisect भी करेंगे and the diagonals are equal also. Diagonals आपके ये bisect भी कर रहे हैं as it is there in the parallelogram, and these diagonals are equal also, and they bisect each other at 90 degree also. So, there are a few properties related to the diagonal, that the diagonal bisect each other, which is already there in a parallelogram. In a parallelogram diagonals bisect each other. तो ये property तो already इसमें include हो गई because it's a parallelogram. And then here the unique property, diagonals equal भी हैं, equal also, and diagonals bisect each other at right angle. Diagonals bisect each other at right angle. ठीक है? So, diagonals bisect at 90 degree. And one more property of a square, that all sides are equal also. So, all sides equal also. So, this is these are the properties of a parallelogram. These are the properties of a square. So, now we have already talked about the trapezium and then parallelogram. We have learnt about the property of a parallelogram, and then we have learnt about the property of a square. So, these properties we have learnt it just now. Now, we will talk about the rectangle. In rectangle, अगर हम rectangle की बात करें तो the rectangle, what do you observe? In rectangle क्या property होगी? Tell me whether it's a parallelogram. Yes, it is a parallelogram. So first property that it's a quadrilateral, and it's also a parallelogram. Okay, this is one of the property. And what do you observe here? That each angle is of 90 degree. So each angle equal 90 degree. Each angle is of 90 degree. Okay, so each angle is 90 degree. Now, what should be the next property? The diagonals. In this case, the diagonals, if we will take the diagonals here, the diagonals bisect each other. In this case, the diagonals bisect each other. Why? Because it carries all the properties of a parallelogram. तो parallelogram में diagonals bisect each other था, इधर भी diagonal bisect each other होगा. And one more property, that in a rectangle diagonals आपके equal भी होते हैं. Diagonals are equal. Diagonals ये दोनों आपके equal भी होते हैं. ठीक है? And we have already talked about the diagonals bisect each other, opposite angles are equal, and opposite sides are equal and parallel. Okay, so all the properties of a parallelogram will carry in rectangle. Now we will talk about the rhombus. So in rhombus, tell me, first thing, whether it is a quadrilateral? Yes, it's a quadrilateral. Whether it is a parallelogram? Yes, it's a parallelogram. So it means that all the properties of a parallelogram will be there in rhombus also. Now we will talk about the next thing, that in rhombus, that all the sides are equal. So in rhombus, all sides are equal. All sides are equal. And what should be the property related to the diagonal here? The property related to the diagonal is, observe here, this is one of the diagonal and the another diagonal is this one. In a rhombus, the diagonals bisect each other at right angle. यहाँ पे diagonals equal नहीं होते rhombus में, but diagonals bisect each other at 90 degree. So it means that this diagonal, यहाँ पर आपका rhombus में क्या होगा, ये diagonal bisect भी होंगे, means equal parts में भी divide हो रहा है, and they bisect at right angle also. So these are the properties of all different types of quadrilateral, that is trapezium, parallelogram, square, rectangle and rhombus. Be careful that square, rectangle and rhombus, you have to remember square, rectangle and rhombus are also a parallelogram. तो इन तीनों में, स्क्वायर, रेक्टेंगल एंड रॉम्बस में, ये पैरेललोग्राम की सारी प्रॉपर्टीज भी इंक्लूड होंगी. and the remaining unique properties are these one, which you have to remember it. I think this concept is clear to all of you. Thank you.